In the Emerald Isle, something unexplainable is happening. Tonight, prepare to witness the most frightening event in horror podcast history. A journey into the depths of horror history. First Class Horror presents the Class Horror Cast. Evil wears many masks, but pure horror wears only one. Support First Class Horror on Patreon for as little as $1. Can't get enough of the horror? Carve yourself a deal from official merchandise, only on Teespring. Join us on all social media at First Class Horror. We have such sights to show you.
Born in the wilderness of Maine and raised in the deep south of Florida, Ryan Spindell originally started his journey being terrified of horror movies right up until he became a teen. From there, he developed a huge love for the genre and wanted to work in the industry. Fast forward to 2021 and Ryan has released his first horror hit with the Mortuary Collection, due on Blu-ray April 20th. He has also worked on movies such as It Follows, and he's also released an amazing documentary called We Come in Pieces. Currently, he is working hard on writing new material. We talked about everything from his process of writing and directing, to advice for creatives, and even Instagram fame. Ryan is extremely talented and an intelligent filmmaker, with a flair for horror. I hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as I did. The Mortuary Collection releases on Blu-ray April 20th, 2021. Do you have any, I don't want to call them guilty pleasure, but like, do you have any of those comfort movies that maybe aren't seen as like a great movie, but you just can't help yourself but go back to it over and over again?
That's a good question. I know I do.
Like I have things like Urban Legend and stuff, some of those like slasher movies that like I didn't think I would be super into, that I'm like, I find I like put them on as someone, what did someone say to me? They use them as a wallpaper when they're writing or studying or something like that. They'll just like, they have these movies they'll just put on.
I mean, I do that, but those are great movies. Because when I'm writing, like I'm doing a script right now that is highly inspired by Poltergeist, which is one of my favorite movies of all time. So I'll put Poltergeist or I'll put another Spielberg movie on silent in the corner of my desktop while I'm working, just because I love his shot design, and I love just like, sometimes I'll look over and just be inspired by sort of the things that he does. So, or Jaws is another one that I watch all the time. I don't know. You know, it's funny. I don't think I'm part of a bad movie night where it's like a guilty pleasure every time, I guess, or just a terrible movie. But I don't think I have. I try to spend my time watching the best movie that I can, because what happened to me is there was a period of time, you know, when I wasn't working a lot, and I was loving horror, and I was watching everything that would come out in horror. Thank God Amazon Prime didn't exist at that time, because I would have just lost my mind. But I was like Netflixing like 3 movies at a time, and I was just watching everything. And I remember watching this one movie, and I watched about 15 minutes of it, and I just turned it off. I was like, I think some of these movies are making me a worse filmmaker. And so I just decided to like stop watching bad horror. And that's hard, because most horror is bad. So it really cut a lot of my entertainment stuff off. But now if I watch movies, I watch my favorite movies because I don't have time to watch. I don't have time for guilty pleasures. But like The Frighteners is a movie that like, I don't know if that's a movie that's talked about a lot. I love that movie. I definitely watch it at least once or twice a year. And I watch like the long version that's like 37 hours long. And I guess I could consider that a guilty pleasure, and that I never get tired of that movie and what it does.
Yeah, I definitely feel that. And just when you mentioned Amazon and stuff there, I think I kind of went down a similar route in a way, because I guess, look, you get busier in life and things take over, and then I kind of want to try and condense things that, like, at one point I was watching basically everything. And it got to the point where I think right now, I was just looking, so Amazon Prime, at least over here, I know it's a little bit different between here and the States, currently has 1,220 horror movies in its...
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, I do definitely get what you're saying. And I had gotten to the point where it was like, what is my watch list anymore? I don't even know what's going on anymore. And then I felt like I had kind of gotten into maybe watching bad movies was like a thing. I didn't see any, like, people would say like, oh dude, have you checked out this movie? And I'm like, no, I've been watching like Leprechaun, Goes Grocery Shopping Part 7. I'm not really sure.
Yeah.
And I would miss all those big movies.
I slip into that time. I remember when I was like making the Mortuary Collection, and I would like search for horror anthologies. And if you want to find some absolutely terrible movies, search horror anthology movies. It's a bummer because I hate the idea that someone would search horror anthology, find something like The Snowman Chronicles 3 or something, and then like decide that that's what a horror anthology is going to be. I mean, that's the problem, is the subgenre itself is like overcrowded with bad films. And especially like there's been some good ones, but like the new trend of finding a bunch of horror shorts and then compiling them together into a 2-hour runtime and then selling that as a feature. I almost wish that feel like that should have a different name, because I think it's like, it's really watering down what I think a great horror anthology can be. I think a great horror anthology could be like VHS, where it's a bunch of like cool filmmakers coming together to like work on a project. But I think these aggregate films are watering it down. And oh man, there's just so many on Amazon. I still sometimes, like on a Saturday morning, I'll like watch like 20 minutes of one, but like I can't commit the whole runtime. Yeah,
there's so many times that's happened to me as well, where like I found some movies I was actually surprised by. I found one recently on Amazon, the Clove Hitch Killer, I think it was called.
I've heard of that.
Yeah, that was quite good, and it was one of those things where I just randomly was like, okay, I'm going to watch this thing. But like, yeah, you're right. There's so many things there that it's like, it got to the point where I was like, I actually waste so much time on things that are just pure. Like, it's not even so bad it's good. It's just bad. It's just all bad.
That's the weird dilemma of the being stuck in a pandemic for me as a writer, has been that when everybody is home all the time, the pressure to be generating a lot of great material feels heightened. Mm-hmm. So where it could be a gift, like, oh, this is a chance to write a bunch of great content, and when the things open up again, you can like launch out into the world. And it is to some degree. And I also had this anxiety about how I'm spending the time, and if I'm not being as productive as possible, like something's wrong with me. And so that's like really cut into my viewing habits. And so I basically like will have to schedule time to watch movies. And then when I do schedule the time, I try to watch basically anything that's new and seems promising in the horror space, especially because, as a filmmaker who just made a feature and the plan was to play a bunch of festivals and I wanted to meet other filmmakers again, it's like you make a film, you're in a hole for like years. And so when you finish the film, you want to crawl out of the hole. And the idea of going to festivals and seeing with an audience and meeting other filmmakers is like the only reward you get, because it's not financial. I can tell you that much. So we had this whole festival thing and it all went away. And so now I'm sitting at home, my desk all day, every day. And so I've been trying to watch other films and reach out and connect with other filmmakers and try to sort of save some sort of semblance of what a festival would have been in the perfect world. And that's where I spend most of my viewing time, I think.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. And I think it's something that maybe got overlooked as well from the audience perspective, the struggles on the other side of the screen. So what's something, like, how do you cope with that? I guess the anxiety to perform, in a sense, to constantly come up with something that, you might think can make it into a movie or a TV show or whatever it might be. Because a lot of people message me, and on Discord and stuff, I get a lot of messages from people when I name the guests, and time again I get this question of, and I guess it's more general, like some people will say like, what advice did I have if I want to be a writer? What advice for a director? But I think a lot of times it just comes from just like a general advice, like how do I cope with maybe imposter syndrome, or just the anxiety about am I good enough? Should I do this? Is anybody going to listen? Am I going to look dumb? Do you have any tips for, or just any advice that you could give for something like that?
I mean, I'll say this: if you don't have imposter syndrome, and by that I mean the feeling that you're not good enough and you're fooling people. If you don't have that feeling, I don't think you have the tips. So for anyone out there who's listening and who's full of self-doubt, and no matter where they are in their career, that feeling of self-doubt is your inner critic. That can be a real bastard, but is also the part of you that forces you to get better and to grow as a filmmaker and a creative. And that is essential for anybody, I think, who wants to make it in any of the creative industries, and maybe in any industry. I can't really speak to that. So I think that self-doubt is important, because what you don't want to do is find a comfort zone and rest in it, because in an industry that's as competitive as any of the arts, you have to always be pushing forward and changing and evolving with the times and getting better and making stuff. So I think I guess the first thing to know is just that everybody who's working, from the most successful director in the world to the least successful, are feeling those same feelings, and those are important. But I think the hard part right now is that the industry is changing, and a lot of content's being made, and it's being made by all these different places. And in the perfect world, a creative would sort of figure out what it is they love and focus on a project and make it the best they could be and put it out into the world and get a thumbs up or a thumbs down and do it again. But what happens in the current state of things is that you never know what's going to happen next. So you're always working on like 10 different projects. And so you have your sort of time spent about these. It's like spinning 10 plates, and you're constantly like, oh, I forgot about this plate. And you're like going to like spin this one some more. And you start to feel at times like you're just spinning a bunch of plates, but none of them are going anywhere. And so that's the challenge, is like trying to figure out, okay, what's the thing that I need to sort of put most of my energy into, and what are the plates I'm spinning that are stupid, that I shouldn't be spinning right now because I need to sort of focus my energy. And I think some of the most like successful people in the industry are the ones that can spin a million different plates. But I find that those people can rarely like execute, because they're better at this plate spinning than they are about the actual like creation. So that's been a big thing for me with this pandemic, is like, if I have a writing gig that is paying me, then that clearly gets all of my attention, because I need to survive. But when I get into a phase like I am right now, where I have like 6 different things that are sort of at various stages, it's all about sort of organizing my time and figuring out where to put most of myself to, because it feels like the thing that's going to move forward the most. And then it's funny, because you talk to filmmakers and they're like, I had 5 projects going. The project I was least interested in was the one that took off. And so it's a weird state to be in. And I think it's like, it's something you have to learn to deal with, because it never goes away. There's no level of success that you reach in which these feelings stop. They just become different and more complicated as you sort of rise up in the ranks. And it's important, I think, for newer filmmakers to sort of understand that that's part of it, and that they're going to have to deal with it. And if they can't really deal with that constant sense of anxiety or imposter syndrome or stress, then they should do something else, because it's from all that I know, it's not easy for anybody.
Yeah. And I think that'll be refreshing for a lot of people to hear, because I guess in the days of social media and stuff, and you kind of alluded to it before, we see this, you see the version of everything that people want you to see. And it's kind of like the 1%er thing. Like, you see the guy with the Lamborghini and it's always sunny and he has a mansion and it's all fun and games and there's no anxiety, there's no stress. But it's like, for the most part, I think anybody, and at most levels, even like you said, like even people who are considered successful, I would imagine go through some serious things and a lot of doubts and concerns and maybe you know, you have a hit or your stuff starts to take off and you kind of become a bit more popular. There's, I guess, maybe an anxiety to replicate that again.
Yeah, because it's like well then now you have more to lose the next time you try. Now you're not just like throwing it against the wall. Now you have to like do as good, if not better, or people will think you're sort of a one-hit wonder. And it also feels like the industry feels like a ladder where there's always another rung that you need to reach. And sometimes those rungs are it's a big gap and you never feel like that first feature. I never feel like I'll get that first feature. And then you do get it. But the thing is you almost never look down to see how many rungs you've climbed. You only see the next rung. So it's just, it's kind of sad, honestly. And I think it's why it's so important to try to make sure that the pie chart that is your life has other things other than just film. Because otherwise, if all you have is just your career and your projects, I can't imagine it's a very fulfilling existence.
Yeah, I it was something else that I had actually written down that a lot of people had asked me about. I guess the thing of structuring your life, maybe, or a lot of times people seem to struggle with, they're so passionate about this one thing where it's like, I don't want to do anything else. I don't want to work the 9 to 5. I don't want to party. I don't want to do this. But then they find like that they struggle with relationships, or they struggle to, you know, maybe with friends, they lose friends. Their family can't understand. Is there anything that can be done about that? Or is that just one of those things that comes with maybe being a dreamer in a way, or being a creative?
That is a good question. I don't know. There's a lot of levels to that question. Ask me the question one more time. So make sure I'm hearing you right. So you're just talking about like the general life struggles of being a creative in a world that doesn't necessarily celebrate creatives.
Yeah, and maybe dealing with the fact that like for example, like over here in Ireland, we're probably even more subdued about things like this than the States. The States is kind of seen as like the land of opportunity. Here, we're still many, many years behind it, I think, in the sense of, you know, if you don't come out with the usual, like, I want to be an architect or a doctor or a lawyer, you know, if someone were to say, you know, I want to be a filmmaker, or I want to be in radio or TV, people kind of still go, what? What are you talking about? Or like I have a friend who's actually quite successful on YouTube, and he managed to quit his day job and stuff. And, you know, people were like, I said, what do? You sit at home on your computer? That's a bit weird. And I think a lot of people struggle with either not being able to get over that, you know, losing friends, maybe can't hold a relationship, or how do you divide your time out? Kind of like what you said, where it doesn't become your whole life. It doesn't become an obsession to a point where you can't live.
Yeah, no, and I think like, so I can only speak to the life of being a writer, director, or filmmaker within the film industry, specifically LA. But I don't think the film industry is probably too much different. I think I would almost prefer to be in the film industry in a place like England or Scotland or Ireland than here, because this is just a bit of a quagmire of people trying to all do the same thing.
Yeah.
But I can definitely say that I think it all depends on what your intentions are. If you want to get into film because you don't want to have a 9 to 5, that's probably not the reason. That's not going to work out for you, because in order to find success, or at least my experience within such an insanely difficult industry, It has to be, I guess the adage is, if you can imagine yourself doing anything else, then don't do film. If you can only imagine yourself doing film, it is the only thing you could possibly ever do, then you have no choice. Become a filmmaker. And as somebody who's been doing it for 12 years now, I can't agree with that more. I think that there is a lot of insane sacrifice, family, friends, a normal existence, like my adult friends who own houses and have 3 kids and have amazing Instagram lives. You do sacrifice all of that stuff for this really strange passion. But that being said, if there's nothing else you can do but making films, the rewards that can come from it are like nothing else. So it's like the extreme sports of careers, I think. It's a weird in modern times because there's like an obsession with being famous is the thing. Everybody wants to be famous and not really even have a skill for being famous. It's just be famous because they think that they're really important. And man, if that is your career path, or if that's your aspiration, filmmaking is 100% the wrong place to go. I would stick to Instagram modeling or something along those lines, because it's very unglamorous. Yeah,
it's just when you mentioned that there about people kind of maybe wanting to be famous just for the sake of it. About it's probably 2 years ago now at this point, I was at a I guess not a job drive, like a career day in a school, and it was just so weird to see like some of the kids, you know, I thought it was strange, not strange in a bad way, but it was strange to see how things had changed, where like you had kids saying like, you know, I want to be a YouTuber, I want to be a professional gamer. And I thought those were in a way quite cool and unique because people have completely changed their lives with stuff like that. But then like I had seen some of the girls and, you know, they were saying things like, you know, oh, I want to be Instagram famous or I want to be TikTok famous. And I'm like, what does that even mean anymore? Like, I don't even get like it. Is that a skill or is that just...
It can't be, can't be sustainable. I mean, like, I mean, even not self-admittedly not, I mean, I barely know what Reddit is. Like even someone who doesn't know much about digital platforms and social media in general, I can't imagine that just existing can be a thing that can last long. I think you have to contribute something. And like YouTube is one of the best places in the world, full of talented people. But everybody I follow on YouTube and everything I watch on YouTube is somebody with a skill set and their work ethic, and they're making amazing things, or they're like speaking intelligently about film and craft and that kind of stuff. Yes, huge. If you have a skill or you're sharing something, just sharing you posing on a hill, while it might be fulfilling in the short run, there's no way that ends well for you, I don't think.
Yeah, like even here in Ireland now, things like OnlyFans and stuff like that has taken off to the point where we have like our big TV station over here is called RTE, and they have a show, like a live kind of like talk show thing. And like they had a guy on, he's I don't know what he's like, an Instagram model or something. He does like topless pictures and all this other weird shit. But like they had his portfolio or whatever you want to call it, and like he's making 60 grand a month selling like feet pictures and just like
website again?
Lots of weird stuff. And then there's a chick who I don't think she had ever worked. I think she like was living on like social welfare or something like that, and she's made 390,000 euros in like 6 weeks on OnlyFans. And I'm like, again, like you said, like it's might be fine for like a cash in at some point or whatever to make 500,000 or whatever, but then at some point you've got to transfer that into something. I don't think, because what's going to happen when you're not 25 and
I mean, maybe you could save your money and hire an accountant to invest your money in proper places and be great. And maybe if that's the way if you play it that way, I have a feeling the people who are on OnlyFans are not that way. No. But that is it. That's interesting. Yeah. I mean, essentially it's modeling, right? I mean, like every, even being an Instagram person, you're just a model. You're just looking at somebody holding products, and that's, it's so bizarre. I don't even know how I got onto that topic. People will probably be giving me shit for that now. I think I did that. I'll take the responsibility. I think I pushed. Instagram famous. So I've only a couple of questions left, and I appreciate you taking the time because I know you're probably super bogged down with different things. That's a good escape. I needed to stop staring at my computer screen and writing. So this is kind of just a fun question, really, and I don't know if you've ever had any thought about this, but if you could get involved with any existing IP, whether that be maybe rebooting it, writing a new sequel or whatever, which would you pick and why? I mean, look, this is kind of going to be an obvious one, and I hate that I'm so predictable, but I would reboot Tales from the Crypt as a series with the Crypt Keeper, and I would do just an epic anthology show with a real budget and amazing makeup effects and great stories. That's the dream. Yeah, I think I can nearly hear the people already when they listen to this going, oh my God. If only. I know, man. I just feel like there's such a space for that kind of content. Yep. I mean, talk about a show that I can watch again and again and again. I just rewatched almost every episode over the summer because my parents had them on VHS, and I went home to watch 2 episodes a morning, and it was it's just such a fun show. I'd forgotten how amazing it is. So, and I definitely feel like there's a really good way as well to bring that into modern day. I know that would probably be a lot of the pushback from maybe executives and stuff. It just doesn't work now. But I definitely think, like you said, there's a huge space there, if done right, for that to come back. Huge. I think that, I think it's the kind of thing that people want more of. I want more of that kind of humor, like as a horror, as a fan. I remember around Halloween time, just looking for fun horror, escapist horror. Yeah. That was well made. And it felt like there's been a shift. I think there's been a strange trend in horror where some really great movies like Hereditary have come out, and now everybody's trying to recreate that thing. Like horror always is, people trying to recreate the one successful thing. And I love Hereditary. I mean, I love Hereditary, but I don't want every horror movie to now be a highbrow think piece, which Hereditary isn't even. So, like, I don't know why it set that trend into motion. But I remember surfing and just like, I don't want something that's going to make me feel gross. I just want a fun popcorn movie, and ideally, it sneaks some real ideas in there under the surface. But I want something that, on the surface, is just enjoyable. And so I want that to come back more than anything. Yeah, and I definitely, the more I think about that, that happens way too often and sometimes kind of fucks up things because, something comes out and it's a little bit of a hit or it's like a super hit. And like you said, like everybody scrambles to, and I think a lot of times as well, it probably comes from the executives and companies are like, okay, how can we make our Hereditary? How can we make our whatever movie it is? And it's like, everybody's trying to do exactly that. And it's like, it's just... It comes from, I think, the people in power not having any understanding of the genre themselves. And they only understand what makes money. So they see that it made a bunch of money and they say, everything needs to star kids. Like, without understanding what else went into making that movie a hit. Or... Hereditary comes out. Everything has to be an auteur director now. Like everything has to be through A24, and it has to be a think piece. And that's not how those movies were made in the first place. And And it's, and that's kind of where anthology movies, I think, are existing too. Like, nobody's made that one anthology movie that has set the box office on fire and like made all the executives suddenly decide they love anthology movies. But I think someday that will happen. Just with the way things are going, I can't imagine that like we're not due for that.
Yeah, at
soon.
some point. Yeah, definitely. Okay, so why horror and what does it mean to you?
Horror to me, it's interesting because it just goes back to what we were talking about earlier about sort of the existential crisis that I had during the pandemic and the kind of defining what horror can mean to audiences. And then sort of that kind of comes back on me. So I would say that it is for me, it's escapism. It's a way to step out of the normal, sometimes grueling world and to totally sort of live someplace else and feel feelings that I don't feel on a regular basis. Not that I don't feel horror on a regular basis, because I do, but a different kind of horror, I guess. So it's a safe form of escapism that allows me to sort of to process things. And it's interesting too, because I do find that people who hate horror and who like, oh, I can't watch horror, it freaks me out, I have nightmares. I feel sad for those people, because there's a really incredible release, psychological release that comes from enjoying that kind of content and sort of the safety of your home or a theater, that those people are missing out on. And those feelings that they have, those anxieties about what horror movies will bring out in them, those anxieties aren't going anywhere. They're just building inside these people. And they have to find some sort of outlet. So, I think that horror functions in a lot of different ways for a lot of different people. But I think, those are probably the reasons that I'm drawn to it, I think, as a fan.
And it's funny that you had mentioned something you just said there reminded me. I had started to kind of introduce somebody who didn't really watch horror at any point to different movies, and I kind of started with maybe some of the more generic, like mainstreamy movies, and we watched My Bloody Valentine 3D recently. And it was funny because at the end I was like, well, because I mean, I guess it's not a great movie and it's like hard to gauge whether someone's gonna, and she was like, that was like super fun. I kind of get I was like, it's really bizarre that movie done it for you, but she was like, I kind of get why people like this kind of weird roller coaster, and like I forgot everything that's going on. I forgot about COVID. I forgot about work and what's going on with my job, and it was just like this fun. I'm watching this guy with his thing, and I was like, yeah, that's awesome. Kind of what horror is, though, in general. I was like, and you get that in so many different. It doesn't have to be slasher. It can be anything, really.
Sure. You can convert people. I've seen it done many times. It happens a lot with actors when you work with actors that don't like horror. And then after they work on one and they see how much fun they are to make, they start to investigate and kind of fall in love with the genre independently of the project, which is really cool. And I think that, like, not to keep self-promoting the movie, because I really am not trying to promote the movie at this point in time, but I do think that, like, one of the best compliments that we've gotten with the Mortuary Collection that I think always means the most to me is when I talk to somebody and they say, I actually hate horror, but I really loved your film, because that sentiment kind of speaks to the movie working as a movie and not necessarily just as like a piece of genre material, if that makes sense. And I love that. And the idea that like somebody, maybe some kid could watch the Mortuary Collection and then fall in love with the horror genre. That's kind of like the ultimate dream.
Yeah. And it definitely, for me, I have these movies that like I associate, I guess, with Halloween and the fall season and just that whole idea. And it's like I have kind of random movies. Like I always, for some reason, associate Trick or Treat with that. Hocus Pocus is another huge one for me that I always associate with that time of year. And again, not to sound like I'm blowing smoke here, but Mortuary Collection really fits into that kind of feel. I feel like it can be one of those staples for like every year it's like, you've got to pull this movie out. We've got to watch this movie.
That's awesome.
It's got like
that would be amazing.
Yeah, it's got that feeling for sure. Okay, so last thing then. I always ask people at the end. So if you could give us a Ryan recommended, whether it be a horror book, comic, movie, it can be something that you've seen years ago or something you've seen recently that you would recommend people check out, other than the Mortuary Collection, which the links will be below for.
I mean, I would say, I mean, not to repeat myself, but I would, if you haven't seen The Frighteners, I would seek that out and watch it. It is produced by Robert Zemeckis, directed and written by Fran Walsh and Peter Jackson, the team that did Lord of the Rings, starring Michael J. Fox. It has all the fun of Back to the Future with the horror of Ghostbusters, and it's 5 different movies all in one. Some people will criticize it for that. I think it should be celebrated. It's a really wonderful movie and definitely perfect for the Halloween season or any time you want some comfort food. Awesome.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time.
Of course, man. Thank you so much for having me. This is so cool.
Yeah, it's been fun to chat and stuff, and maybe we'll get to do it again when you have some announcements, maybe.
Yeah, man. I got another one. The next one I'm making is very much rooted in the Halloween feelings as
nice.
Well. It's only one movie, not 5. So I hope I don't disappoint too many of my fans. But
and for everybody listening, the links for everything will be down below as always. So the movie is out on Blu-ray in April, am I right?
April 20th, that's right.
April 20th, right. Yep. Okay. And then right now it's streaming.
At least in the States. No, it's the States and the UK. I think it'll be available then. And then it'll also be on iTunes and probably Amazon and all of that.
I would imagine. So, I was just going to say that I'm not sure with the regions and stuff, but generally when a movie makes any waves at all, they kind of sort that licensing thing out pretty quick, and you'll find it releases everywhere.
Right.
So all the links will be down below for Ryan's stuff, and we'll see you guys in the next one.
Support First Class Horror on Patreon for as little as $1. Can't get enough of the horror? Carve yourself a deal from official merchandise only on Teespring. Join us on all social media at First Class Horror. We have such sights to show you.